My ex-husband invited me to his wedding as a joke. I arrived in a $2 million dress and shocked all. The invitation arrived in a pale ivory envelope, heavier than it needed to be, as if the weight of it could somehow carry the years I'd spent trying to forget him. I almost didn't open it. For a long moment, I stood by my kitchen counter, fingers hovering over the seal, my reflection staring back at me in the dark window. I had rebuilt my life brick by fragile brick after the divorce. New apartment, new job, new routines that didn't include waiting up for someone who never came home. And then, like a ghost with perfect timing, there it was. His name, Daniel Carter. Even reading it made something inside me tighten. Not pain exactly, but something quieter. Something older. I broke the seal. You're invited to celebrate the union of Daniel Carter and Emily Rhodes. I almost laughed. Not out of joy. No, this was the kind of laugh that escapes when something is so absurd it doesn't feel real. At the bottom, written in his unmistakable handwriting, was a note. You should come. It'll be funny. Funny. I sank into the chair, staring at those words. After everything, after the late nights, the broken promises, the silence that grew between us like a wall, this was what I was to him now. A joke. I set the invitation down and walked away, but it followed me all day. At work, during meetings, even as I tried to fall asleep that night. The word echoed. Funny. By morning, I knew I wasn't going to ignore it. But I also wasn't going to walk in there as the woman he remembered. The truth is, Daniel and I hadn't always been strangers. There was a time when we built our life together from nothing. Tiny apartment, mismatched furniture, dreams bigger than our bank account. I worked 2 jobs while he tried to launch his business. I believed in him when no one else did. I still remember the night he almost quit. He was sitting on the floor, head in his hands, whispering, "I can't do this anymore." I knelt beside him, took his face in my hands, and said, "You can. And you will. I'm right here." And I meant it. I was always right there. Until one day, he wasn't. Success changed him in ways I didn't see coming. The late nights became excuses. The distance became indifference. And eventually, I became invisible. The divorce wasn't explosive. There were no dramatic fights or broken plates. Just a quiet realization that I was holding on to someone who had already let go. So I signed the papers. And I left. 3 years later, I stood in a high-end boutique in downtown Manhattan, staring at a dress that didn't feel real. "Are you sure about this?" the stylist asked gently. The gown shimmered under soft lighting. Hand-stitched silk, delicate crystal detailing, a silhouette that flowed like water. It wasn't just expensive, it was extraordinary. I ran my fingers along the fabric. "I'm not buying it for him," I said quietly. "I'm buying it for me." That was only partly true. The dress cost just under $2 million, a number that once would have terrified me. But life had shifted in unexpected ways since the divorce. After leaving Daniel, I had thrown myself into work, not out of revenge, but survival. I built a consulting firm from scratch, helping struggling startups find their footing. I knew what it meant to believe in something fragile. And people trusted me. 1 client turned into 10. 10 turned into 100. Before I realized it, I wasn't just stable, I was successful. Not flashy, not loud, but solid. Still, the dress wasn't about money. It was about closure. The wedding was held at a sprawling estate just outside London. Perfectly curated gardens, white roses lining the pathway, soft music drifting through the air. I arrived alone. Of course I did. For a moment, I stayed inside the car, watching guests step out in elegant attire, laughing, embracing. I wondered if anyone would recognize me. Then I smiled. It didn't matter. I stepped out. The dress caught the light instantly, turning heads before I even reached the entrance. Conversation softened, then stopped altogether. I felt it. The shift in energy, the curiosity. Not because I wanted attention, but because I finally wasn't hiding. Inside, the venue was breathtaking. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, tables set with meticulous precision. It looked like something out of a dream. Or maybe a performance. I was scanning the room when I heard a familiar voice. "Well, I didn't expect that." I turned. Daniel stood a few feet away, his expression frozen somewhere between shock and disbelief. For a second, neither of us spoke. He looked older. Not in a bad way. Just different. The kind of aging that comes from carrying things you don't talk about. You came, he said finally. You invited me, I replied. His eyes flickered to the dress. What is this? I tilted my head slightly. You said it would be funny. For the first time, I saw something crack in his expression, not anger, not embarrassment. Something quieter. Regret, maybe. Before he could respond, someone approached, a woman in a soft ivory gown, radiant in a way that felt effortless. Emily. She looked at me, then at Daniel. You didn't tell me your ex-wife was coming. Her tone wasn't sharp, just curious. Daniel hesitated. I didn't think she would. I stepped forward, offering a small smile. I almost didn't. Emily studied me for a moment, then extended her hand. I'm glad you did. Her kindness caught me off guard. I am too, I said softly. The ceremony began shortly after. I sat near the back, watching as Daniel stood at the altar, waiting. When Emily walked down the aisle, something shifted in the room, a collective breath, a quiet kind of awe. She looked happy, truly happy, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't angry, not anymore. As they exchanged vows, I found myself remembering, not the end of my marriage, but the beginning. The laughter, the hope, the belief that love could carry you through anything. Maybe it still could, just not always with the same person. After the ceremony, guests gathered for the reception. I was about to slip out quietly when I noticed a young girl sitting alone near the edge of the garden. She couldn't have been more than 10, her small hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the ground. Something about her stillness pulled me in. I walked over slowly. Mind if I sit? She looked up, surprised, then shook her head. What's your name? I asked. Lily. I'm Ava. She glanced at my dress, eyes widening slightly. You look like a princess. I laughed softly. I don't feel like one. There was a pause. Are you okay? I asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, my mom couldn't come. I felt something tighten in my chest. I'm sorry. She's sick, Lily added. Dad says she'll get better, but he says that a lot. I didn't know what to say at first. So I just listened. Sometimes, that's what people need most. We talked for a while. About school, about her favorite books, about how she wanted to be a doctor one day so she could help people like her mom. And somewhere in that conversation, the world around us faded. The music, the laughter, the luxury, it all became background noise. Because in that moment, nothing mattered more than a little girl who needed someone to hear her. Do you want to see something? I asked. She nodded. I gently took her hand and led her toward the center of the garden, where the lights shimmered above us. Close your eyes, I said. She did. Now make a wish. For what? Anything. She was quiet for a second. Then, softly, I wish my mom gets better. I swallowed hard. Good wish, I said. When she opened her eyes, she smiled, just a little, but enough. And that felt like everything. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave, I felt a hand on my arm. I turned. Daniel, I saw you with Lily, he said. I nodded. She's a good kid. He hesitated. Her mom, she's been struggling for a while. Treatments are expensive. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I looked out at the garden, where Lily was now laughing with other children. Daniel, I said quietly, do you remember when we had nothing? He nodded slowly. And how scared we were. Every day. I took a breath. No one should have to go through that alone. He looked at me, something unspoken passing between us. I've been funding medical grants, I added. Quietly. No publicity. His eyes widened slightly. I'd like to help her, I said simply. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, almost in a whisper, you always did that. Did what? Care, even when no one noticed. I smiled faintly. Someone always notices. As I walked away from the estate that night, the air cool against my skin, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because of the dress. Not because of the looks or the whispers or even Daniel's reaction. But because I had finally understood something simple. I didn't need to prove anything. Not to him. Not to anyone. The life I built, the kindness I chose, the people I helped, that was enough. More than enough. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back.